For a long time, I thought that authenticity was a loud scream. But it is like the silence between words. I grew up in a world where voice is proof. Where you had to speak, scream, explain yourself so that you wouldn't be erased. Where silence was perceived as weakness, as a lack of position, as fear. And I screamed too. In my own way. Through videos, through texts, through eyes that wanted to be heard. But over time, I realized, the loudest is not always the most sincere. Authenticity doesn't need loudness. It doesn't prove itself. It just is. Like the silence between words, not empty, but filled. Where we don't speak, we feel. Where there are no explanations, there is presence. I began to notice how Yulia is silent next to me. How her silence doesn't scare, but calms. How she doesn't fill the space with words, but simply breathes next to me. And I learned to be in this silence. Not to run away from it, not to fill it with jokes or phrases. Just to be. Silence also appeared in my videos. Not as a pause, but as part of the story. When the frame lingers longer than it should. When the music doesn't play, but simply falls silent. When the voice fades away, and only breathing remains. This is not an editing error. It is a choice. Because it is in silence that truth is born. I remember the moments when I was alone. Not lonely, but exactly alone. In a room where nothing distracts. In a park where leaves rustle, but no one speaks. On a train where everyone looks out the window, and everyone thinks their own way. These moments are like mirrors. They don't tell you who you are. They simply show you. And if you are ready to look, you will see. I am no longer afraid of pauses. Because it is in them that truth is born. It's not about drama. It's not about effect. It's about the fact that we often hide behind words. And when they are not there, we remain naked. And then you can see who we are. This part is the beginning of the end. Because the end is not the end. It is the point where we stop looking and start being. I am not perfect. Not ready. Not a hero. Just someone who has learned to be with myself. If you are here, it means that something in you was also looking. And, perhaps, found it. In this chapter, I am no longer looking for myself. I simply am. Not perfect, not ready, not a hero. Just someone who has learned to be with myself. For a long time, I thought that being yourself is knowing who you are. Having a clear definition, confidence, a position. But over time, I realized, being yourself is not knowing, but staying with yourself, even when you don't know. It's like sitting next to yourself in silence. Not running away, not making excuses, not looking for noise. Just being. Even when it hurts. Even when it's embarrassing. Even when you want to run away. I learned to be next to myself when I didn't have time. When I didn't meet expectations. When I couldn't say the right words. When Yulia looked at me, and I didn't know how to explain what I felt. And she just stayed. Didn't pressure. Didn't ask. Just was there. And I learned to be the same way, with myself. This is not romance. This is not motivation. This is something deeper. It's like an inner touch that doesn't need hands. Like an inner look that doesn't need eyes. I began to notice how often we leave ourselves. When we criticize. When we compare. When we say, I'm not enough. These are not just thoughts, they are acts of abandonment. We leave ourselves without even noticing. And then we watch videos, look for answers, read quotes. And all this is an attempt to return. To ourselves. To the one who was there, but we didn't hear him. I learned to be there for myself when I edited the video. When the frames didn't add up. When the voice didn't sound right. When I wanted to delete everything. But I stayed. And I told myself, this is me too. And I'm not leaving. It's a practice. Like breathing. Like morning tea. Like the silence before bed. Being there for yourself is not about perfection. It's about loyalty. About not betraying yourself, even when the world says, you have to be different. I'm not a hero. I'm not ready. I don't always know what to do. But I'm here. And that's enough to get you started. I am no longer afraid of pauses. because it is in them that truth is born. Silence is not emptiness. It is not absence. It is not what remains when everything disappears. Silence is presence without noise. It is a moment when you do not have to prove anything, when you do not have to be interesting, strong, cheerful, when you simply are. I have long been afraid of silence. It seemed dangerous to me, because there was nothing to defend in it. No words, no jokes, no music. Just me. And what I did not want to see. But that is where I began to heal. Not through answers, but through presence. Because I stayed. I did not run away. I did not switch. I did not close the tab. Silence is like water. It does not heal instantly. It envelopes. It penetrates the cracks. It doesn't ask permission. It just is. In a relationship, silence is also a language. When Yulia is silent, I hear more than when she speaks. Her silence is not cold. It is warm. Like a blanket that is not visible, but it is there. We sit next to each other. And we don't have to say anything. And this is the deepest dialogue. Because it is not about words. It is about trust. In creativity, silence is a pause before the frame. This is the moment when you don't know what to say, and that is why you should press record. This is a frame where nothing happens, and that is why it speaks. I learned to leave silence in the video. Not to fill it with music. Not to shorten it with editing. Just to leave it. Because the viewer also has the right to pause. To breathe. To yourself. In everyday moments, silence is when you don't respond immediately. When you don't react automatically. When you allow yourself to think. To feel. To simply be. It's not always easy. Because the world screams. Because algorithms demand speed. Because people want reactions. But I choose silence. Because it is my truth. I am no longer afraid of pauses. Because it is in them that truth is born. And truth is not always beautiful. But it is always alive. Not perfect, not ready, not a hero. Just someone who has learned to be by their side. The world loves heroes. Those who win. Those who know what to do. Those who don't hesitate. But I'm not a hero. And I don't want to be one. I don't always know what to say. Sometimes I'm silent when I need to speak. Sometimes I speak when it would be better to remain silent. I'm confused. I hesitate. I'm afraid. And that's what makes me alive. Imperfection is not a flaw. It's proof that you're real. Because perfection is a mask. And imperfection is skin. I've learned to accept my mistakes. Not as a failure, but as part of the journey. As proof that I'm moving. That I'm not standing still. That I'm trying. This is especially visible in creativity. When the frame is not right. When the light is not right. When the voice trembles. I used to delete. Now I keep it. Because it is in the trembling that truth lies. It is in the imperfection that warmth lies. It is in the pause that life lies. In relationships too. I don't always know how to support. Sometimes I keep quiet when Yulia is hurting. Sometimes I say something clumsy. But I'm there. And she feels it. Because being there is more important than being right. I'm not ready. I'll never be completely ready. Life doesn't wait for us to be perfect. It just goes on. And we go with it. With our fears. With our flaws. With our pauses. I'm not a hero. I'm not saving the world. I'm just trying not to betray myself. And that's a feat in itself. Imperfection is a form of presence. It's when you're not hiding. You're not masking. You're not playing a role. You're just being. And that's when you can be seen. Not an image. Not a shadow. But you. Thank you for being there. This is not the end. This is the beginning of a silence that no longer scares. I've thought for a long time that ending is goodbye. What last words need to be said? To put a period. To conclude. But now I know. Completion is not the end. It is a space. A space where you no longer have to search. Where you no longer have to prove. Where you no longer have to be someone. You can just be. It's like an evening after a long day, when you don't have to do anything, when you just sit and breathe and feel that you are alive. I thank you, the viewer, not as an author, but as someone who was there, who shared, who didn't hide, because every viewing is not a number. These are eyes. This is a heart. This is someone who is also searching, who also wants to be real, who is also afraid, but leaves. This is not the end, because authenticity has no ending. It is not a plot. It is a state. The silence that no longer scares you is the silence that you have accepted, which has become a part of you, which no longer makes you run away, but on the contrary, invites you to stay. I stay, not because I know what will happen next, but because I am no longer afraid of not knowing. This video is not the finale. This is breathing. This is a pause. This is a moment when you can simply be. And if you are here, it means you are already close to yourself. And this is the most important thing. Thank you for being there. Thank you for staying. Thank you for not betraying yourself.